Basically, the question relates to whether you're going to progress the development or redevelopment of the railway line from Athenry to Claremorris immediately. And I suppose, ancillary to that, can you give us an update of when you intend to publish the strategic rail review?
Very much indeed. At the Deputy may be aware that the NGP committed the Western Rail Corridor to being considered as part of the All-Ireland Strategic Rail Review. The review, announced in 2021 in partnership with the Minister for Infrastructure in Northern Ireland, is considering the Western Rail Corridor in the context of a more strategic framework for investment in our rail network. This review is the first such department-led review in 2 decades and first ever to be conducted on an all-island basis. The review will inform the development of rail on the island of Ireland in the coming decades to 2050, in line with our net zero targets in both jurisdictions. The review is considering the potential scope for improved rail services along various existing and potential future corridors of the network, and that scope includes potential afforded by disused closed lines such as the Western Rail Corridor. Work on the review is now at an advanced stage, and a draft report was published for strategic and environmental assessment public consultation in July. The review recommends that reinvestment to the Western Rail Corridor from Athenry to Claremorris via Tuam be commenced by 2030. This is a significant project, with the review estimating it could cost between 400 and 600 million euros in 2021 prices. The public consultation phase of the SCA process concluded on the 29th of September, and our submissions are now under review by officials from both jurisdictions. Following this process, it's expected that a final report will be submitted for ministerial approval and ultimately the approval of the government, as well as for the Minister for Infrastructure in Northern Ireland, if in place. Obviously, we need the administration back. Briefly, before I come back to you, Deputy Ó Cuív, I believe this is a vital project, and I have asked Irish Rail to answer your question directly to see whether we could this winter start clearing the line in the same way we did in the Shannon-Foynes line, because I think that can only be done in the winter period, and I think we need speed and urgency. I believe it can have a central critical role, not just in the economic development of the west of Ireland, but also being part of a national revival of rail, particularly rail freight. And I'm getting incredible response from businesses right along the west coast looking for such solutions, because they have to reduce their Scope 3 emissions. They have to have a low-carbon transport solution. And I think this link, when it's seen in that strategic context as part of an Atlantic rail corridor running all the way from Ballina, running right down to Rosslare in Wexford, with connections to our some of our main deep water ports for exit out and import, that's why it's so strategically important. I've asked Irish Rail, can they start clearing the line? That obviously requires certain budget provisions, and the timing will be difficult. You have to complete it before March. But that's something I've asked them to do, because I believe it's important we give a signal to the business in the west of Ireland that we're in business on the Western Rail Corridor.
Dr. Ó Cuív.
Minister, that's very welcome news. And as you know, there was work done by Éamon Ó Cuív in clearing the line up near Turbocurry on the section from Claremorris to Collooney. So it'd be very, very good to get the line cleared. I fully agree with you there. Could you tell me, at the same time as they're clearing the line, could the engineering surveys be done to find out exactly what work will need to be done, for example, replacing farm gates and so on, and to draw up an engineering plan so we get an accurate cost of what the real cost of this project is going to be and what it will be able to deliver in terms of frequency of trains and so on. And further, Minister, could I ask you, would you approach TII, who gave a firm commitment that they would replace the bridge at Ballyglunan that was knocked as part of building of the N17 motorway, and that they would now proceed to design and rebuild that? It has been made clear by them that that will come out of their funds, and that funds have been set aside to do that work. So there's 2 further things that could be done immediately to progress this project. And I'd ask you, neither of them are going to cost an awful lot of money. The bridge isn't going to cost you anything because it comes out of TII funds. So would you be favourable towards doing those 3 jobs and really giving a signal to us that this is going to happen, and not by 2030, but by 2025, 26?
The bridge will cost something, and it'll be from the same budget that we're going to need for a whole range of other projects. So, but I have asked officials to to contact TII and to look at that issue because I was informed of it. And as I said, we do need to get clarity as to what the planning, as my understanding, it may have been a condition of the planning that it would be reinstated in the event of the line being restored. So obviously we'd have to adhere to the planning conditions. And yes, in answer to the fundamental question, we do need to start looking at all the engineering details here. My understanding is the line is not in as degraded a condition as the Shannon Foynes to Limerick line was. But I think it had been cleared over the years, so it's not that it has, it's reasonably intact. But yes, we need to look at all the engineering aspects so we can start preparing, in my mind, a business proposal for this. It's not in the existing NDP. It isn't budgeted for. This will require but shifting money around so that we can afford it. But I believe the shift to rail freight is key, and this will unlock the economics of this project. It's not just Athenry to Claremars. It's reopening the Rosslare line. It's Dublin Port having to shift towards rail freight. Shannon Foynes the same, but that's happening. The wider world is going in this direction, and I think we can revive our rail system and the west of Ireland on the back of it.
Dr. Ó Cuív.
Good thing that I provided money for clearing that railway line when I did back in the day under the Clore funding, because I was always conscious of the fact that we need to preserve rights of way that the state owns, whether they're dry canals, railway lines or any other infrastructure owned by the state should be kept free of encroachment by anybody. Minister, can you also confirm to me that in the draft report of the Strategic Rail Review it said that the railway line didn't exist from Charlestown to Collooney. And I think you're aware from pictures you've been seeing that Éamon Ó would totally disagree with you, and they've actually been cleaning that line recently. And therefore, would you agree that the draft strategic rail review was incorrect in its assessment of the railway line from Claremars to Collooney? And will you preserve that route, the whole route, so not only can you connect to Ballina, but you can connect to an even bigger town or city called Sligo?
I think the Strategic Rail Review did a very good job. There were further proposals for rail lines that would protect particularly the border counties running from Mullingar up through Cabmannon up to toward Portadown, and that's a strategically important route. And we have to go back to the case of Miriam. We have to be careful here. We can't do everything in terms of, and while I would love to see a railway line reopened from Collooney to Claremars, the review didn't recommend it, and I don't think we should give false promise. I don't see that coming. Now, the preserving of the line is a separate matter, and whether that's in the form of a greenway or whether it's making sure, as Deputy Ó Cuív says, if there was a change in subsequent years where that became viable, then if you did retain the capability of doing that. But that's not an easy issue in my mind in regard to the Collooney to Claremars line, but we kind of will look at that in terms of how the line might be preserved. Building new rail lines is incredibly expensive. It's very, very expensive. If you have, and I suppose the definition of what's an existing line that you can upgrade, at some point it becomes akin to building new. But the National Investment Framework for Transport, NIFTY, which guides our spending and decisions in the department, is to use existing assets as much as possible. That is where you can deliver much quickly, and that underpins the Strategic Rail Review.